The reason commanders asked for the Smatchet specifically had nothing to do with myth, legend, or stories passed around after the war. It came down to something far more grounded. The Smatchet solved a practical problem that no other British close-quarters weapon of World War II could handle consistently. It delivered decisive force at extremely short distances under high stress with very little training, and it worked in situations where pistols, daggers, rifles, and standard field tools all had their own critical limitations. That was the real secret. It wasn't stylish, it wasn't refined, it simply worked. And the officers who understood what close-quarters combat actually looked like requested the tool that could perform when everything else faltered. Within the opening seconds of the story, the viewer intuitively grasps the principle. But true understanding begins when we look at why the British needed such a weapon at all. Across the war, British commandos, special units, airborne forces, and covert organizations such as the SOE and OSS operated in environments nothing like standard infantry combat. They fought in narrow stairwells, tight alleyways, cramped trench systems, dense woods, low-light interiors, and improvised strongpoints where visibility often shrank to arm's length. These environments punished anything complicated. A weapon had to work even when movement, footing, and fine motor control were badly compromised. Rifles were too cumbersome. Bayonets required distance and leverage that close-quarters terrain rarely allowed. Pistols were useful until muzzle flash and noise gave away positions. Even the famous Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife, superb for precise thrusting, could be blocked or snagged on heavy clothing. That was the gap, and the Smatchet filled it. William Fairbairn, one of the founders of modern combatives, didn't rely on theory. His ideas came from real violence encountered in pre-war Shanghai policing, where confrontations happened at grappling distance. He learned that in these moments, the winning weapon wasn't the one that required perfect timing or fine precision. It was the one that delivered instant shock, overwhelming force, and dependable function when adrenaline destroyed delicate movement. Fairbairn designed the Smatchet exactly for this reality. It was deliberately broad, forward-weighted, simple to hold, and capable of chopping, striking, and thrusting without needing to change technique. None of this was accidental. It was the entire design philosophy. The Smatchet addressed a universal truth about how the body reacts in close combat. When adrenaline surges, precision collapses. Small blades demand accuracy. Mechanical devices require checks and careful handling. The Smatchet needed neither. Its wide, leaf-shaped blade created a zone of effectiveness that didn't depend on perfect aim. Even a poorly angled strike retained stopping power because of its weight distribution. That single feature allowed instructors to teach effective Smatchet use in hours rather than weeks, and that consistency earned commanders' trust. Its stopping ability wasn't mystical, it was physics. A forward-weighted blade builds significant momentum even at moderate speed, transferring disruptive force into bone or tissue. The edges cut, the point punctured, the flat surface hit with the authority of a compact axe. Together, these traits created what Fairbairn called absolute simplicity under absolute stress. He understood that the first moment of contact in close-quarters combat often decides the fight. The Smatchet's entire purpose was to make that first contact decisive. British special units saw this immediately. Recruits with limited training still performed well during stress drills. Its design gave them an advantage that compensated for exhaustion, cold, fear, unstable footing, and near-zero visibility, all of which were common during nighttime raids, a cornerstone of commando warfare. The weapon reflected Fairbairn's philosophy in every detail. Typically 14 to 16 inches overall, it featured a broad blade with enough mass for concussive power. Both edges were sharpened for slashing and chopping. The tip was reinforced for reliable thrusting. The spine was thick, providing durability without sacrificing speed. The steel was often darkened to prevent reflections, a crucial detail for special forces. The handle was uncomplicated but secure. shaped for retention even when wet, muddy, or freezing. In practice, the Smatchet served as 3 tools in one: a machete for clearing brush or cutting rope, a compact chopping weapon for breaching light barriers, and a dedicated close combat blade. This versatility was especially valuable for airborne troops who landed with limited gear and needed a single tool to handle both survival tasks and combat problems. Comparing it with other British weapons highlights why commanders asked for it specifically. The Fairbairn Sykes dagger excelled at precise thrusts but demanded skill. Heavy winter clothing could reduce its effectiveness without perfect angles. Full-sized machetes had reach but were slow in confined spaces. The No. 3 commando knife was tough but lacked the Smatchet's broad striking power. Improvised trench knives from earlier conflicts were inconsistent and poorly suited for modern special operations. The Smatchet fit exactly in the middle, compact enough for tight environments, heavy enough to immediately disrupt, versatile enough to replace several tools at once. Commanders didn't request it because of romance or legend. They requested it because it made logistical and practical sense. A single weapon that functioned reliably in most close-quarters encounters was something worth prioritizing. Real combat experience proved the Smatchet's value. British commandos operating across Europe preferred it during nighttime raids where absolute silence meant survival. Even a suppressed firearm could give away a position. Sound bouncing off stone walls, echoes traveling down alleyways, or a sudden flash exposing movement. The Smatchet produced none of those risks. No noise, no mechanical action, no chance of jamming. That dependability became one of its greatest tactical strengths. Airborne units, especially those working deep behind enemy lines, also valued the Smatchet because it served as both a practical tool and a defensive weapon. Paratroopers often landed scattered, confused, and separated from their gear. Heavy equipment could be lost or damaged on impact. Ammunition might spill across the drop zone. In those conditions, rugged, multi-purpose tools became indispensable. OSS training materials echoed this dual role: a blade that could cut vegetation and rope, breach light obstacles, and still function as an emergency combat weapon. Instructors repeatedly noted that even smaller or less experienced soldiers performed well with the Smatchet in stressful conditions. That detail is often overlooked. The weapon leveled the playing field. It wasn't dependent on strength, it relied on weight, simple mechanics, and techniques driven by gross motor movements. This is exactly why Fairbairn insisted it be included in SOE and OSS training manuals. It offered a skill set that could be repeated consistently, even in extreme conditions. Yet, despite how effective it was, the Smatchet never became standard issue. The reasons were logistical, not operational. First, it required more steel and machining than simpler knives. Second, it was a specialized tool. The average infantryman wasn't expected to conduct clandestine raids or engage in ultra-close combat. Issuing millions of such weapons simply wasn't practical. Third, its appearance caused political discomfort. In an era when public image mattered, some officials thought the Smatchet looked too brutal, too openly designed for hand-to-hand fighting. These factors limited mass production, but they never diminished the respect the weapon earned among those who needed it. The Smatchet became a quiet favorite, not widespread, but consistently requested by officers who understood its value. Its influence persists in modern close-quarters weapon design. Many contemporary tactical knives borrow from it: forward-weighted blades for chopping and cutting, ergonomic grips designed to stay secure under stress. Instructors still reference the Smatchet as an example of a weapon shaped by human physiology rather than by theoretical technique. But its legacy goes beyond engineering. The Smatchet reflects a philosophy. In extreme conditions, the best tools aren't the most elegant. They're the ones that remain dependable when every other option fails. The real measure of its importance comes from the wartime documents that survived. Veterans rarely discussed close-quarters encounters, but OSS manuals, British training notes, and Fairbairn's own writing repeat the same conclusion. The Smatchet worked because it required almost nothing from the user except commitment and proximity. Looking at how it was used in actual missions makes its purpose even clearer. British raiding teams in Northern Europe relied on silence above all else. Entire operations could succeed or collapse based on the absence of sound. A single gunshot might neutralize an immediate threat, but it could also alert overlapping German patrols. Even a malfunctioning firearm could give off a metallic click loud enough to compromise a position. The Smatchet removed that entire chain of risk. Its silence wasn't just a tactical advantage, it was a strategic safeguard. Training programs emphasized this reality. OSS manuals focused on movements that remained reliable under intense adrenaline. Short, decisive arcs, wide cutting paths, thrusts aligned with natural human reactions. These weren't cinematic techniques. They were built for moments when footing slipped, vision blurred, and heart rate spiked. Instructors crafted Smatchet drills around the fact that stress erodes fine skills. What remained had to be brutally simple and absolutely consistent. Airborne forces demonstrated yet another dimension of the weapon's usefulness. Paratroopers frequently dropped behind enemy lines, scattering across forests, fields, or the outskirts of towns. Landing zones were unpredictable. Equipment could be damaged, lost, or separated from the soldier. Ammunition might scatter. Rifles might bend or jam after a rough landing. In those moments, survival often depended on the one tool still attached to their gear. Compact, durable, and capable as both a utility blade and a combat weapon, the Smatchet became one of the most trusted tools airborne troops carried. Its broad blade could cut through brush, vines, fabric, and rope. Its forward weight allowed it to break wooden barriers or pry open crates. Its thick spine ensured it wouldn't fail when struck against hard surfaces. And when paratroopers unexpectedly ran into an enemy search team, the Smatchet remained one of the few dependable options that needed no ammunition, made no noise, and required no refined technique. Its versatility made it invaluable during missions where uncertainty was the only constant. Commandos in the Mediterranean theater reached the same conclusion. The terrain there was harsh, uneven ground, jagged rock, and tight passages. Engagement distances shrank dramatically in such landscapes. Soldiers climbing ravines or navigating narrow ledges couldn't rely on firearms alone. The restricted movement made them cumbersome. The Smatchet's forward-weighted balance, however, allowed effective strikes even when footing was unstable. A downward blow thrown from an awkward position still delivered enough force to break resistance. In places where accuracy was unreliable, the Smatchet provided something far more important: consistency. What makes these accounts compelling is not nostalgia, but repetition. Different units, different missions, different environments, yet all emphasize the same principle: dependability under stress. And that is precisely why commanders asked for it. They didn't want an exotic or dramatic weapon. They wanted something their soldiers could trust when exhausted, frightened, disoriented, or alone. The Smatchet's design anticipated real-world failure points and mitigated them. Even so, the broader British Army never fielded it universally. The reasons were practical, rooted in wartime supply demands. Uniformity mattered, manufacturing speed mattered, cost mattered. Equipping millions required tools that could be produced quickly and cheaply. The Smatchet demanded more steel than ordinary knives, more machining, and most importantly, only a small percentage of troops actually needed such a specialized blade. Typical infantry rarely faced the kind of covert, high-intensity close combat that defined commando, SOE, and OSS operations. For mass issue, simpler knives met general requirements at a fraction of the cost. Appearance also played a subtle role. The Smatchet's silhouette was undeniably intimidating, a broad, compact blade bridging the look of a machete and a shortened sword. In an era when military aesthetics carried political weight, some officials worried it appeared too savage. These concerns never affected its tactical merit, but did influence procurement outside elite units. Ultimately, none of this mattered where performance was the priority. Instructors preferred it. Commanders relied on it, and soldiers who carried it described a unique sense of confidence, one that didn't depend on technical skill but on the weapon's inherent functionality. The Smatchet consistently delivered results in conditions where many other tools failed. Its legacy after the war reinforces that point. Modern tactical knives frequently incorporate Smatchet-inspired traits: broad leaf-shaped blades, forward-weighted geometry, strengthened tips, and dual-purpose cutting edges. Outdoor survival tools follow the same hybrid logic, combining the chopping ability of a small axe with the thrusting capacity of a fighting knife. Close-quarters training programs still point to Fairbairn's principles, many of which emerged from the same philosophy that shaped the Smatchet: simplicity, reliance on gross motor movements, and dependable performance under extreme stress. Collectors and historians often regard the Smatchet as one of World War II's most intelligently designed close combat weapons, not because it was widely issued, but because it solved a real, recurring tactical problem. It was created for the chaotic, unpredictable reality of close fighting, not for display, not for ceremony, not for tidy doctrine. That practicality is why it has endured so strongly in professional memory. But the most compelling evidence of its worth doesn't come from its design or post-war commentary. It comes from the quieter accounts of those who used it. Many veterans never spoke publicly about close combat. Such experiences were deeply personal, often traumatic, and far from the dramatized image of war. Yet training records, internal memos, and instructor notes reveal one unbroken theme. The Smatchet enabled soldiers to prevail in moments where a split second of hesitation could have been fatal. It offered security in the final meter of a mission, the zone where guns were useless, where darkness erased technique, and where the simplest, most direct tool often decided the outcome. This is the heart of the Smatchet's legacy. It was requested by name because it delivered certainty in uncertain moments. Commanders chose it for results, not prestige. Its reputation was built not on legend, but on performance repeated across countless harsh conditions. Today, when people see a Smatchet behind museum glass, many react with surprise. The blade seems oversized, unconventional, even inelegant. It lacks the delicate lines of the Fairbairn Sykes dagger or the ceremonial refinement of traditional fighting knives. But that appearance reveals its entire purpose. The Smatchet was never meant to be admired. It was designed to end the kinds of close-quarter encounters that conventional tools could not handle. Its shape, balance, and proportions were born from the environments in which it was actually used: collapsed buildings, narrow trenches, and blackout dark city streets. It wasn't designed for theory. It was designed for the world soldiers actually fought in. And that is exactly why it mattered. The Smatchet excelled in places where hesitation could be fatal. It succeeded in missions where a single sound could compromise an entire operation. It performed when blades glanced off clothing, when firearms malfunctioned, and when fear stripped away fine motor skills. It embodied a rare combination: solid engineering paired with real psychological reassurance. Soldiers trusted it. Commanders trusted it. And the weapon earned its place in military history, not because it was glamorous, but because it delivered results when nothing else could. That is why the British Smatchet became the close-quarters weapon officers specifically asked for. If you want the next chapter in this series, whether the push dagger, the No. 3 commando knife, or the Fairbairn Sykes dagger itself, just let me know. And if you want to follow every weapon we explore next, be sure to stick around.